built on relationships, focused on people, and rooted in the community. Welcome to the Build Blue Podcast. Tune in for weekly episodes featuring guests who are building a better tomorrow. You'll hear inspiring stories from industry leaders, business owners, community partners, and our team members. The Build Blue Podcast, where construction comes to life. An Apex Construction Group production. Welcome to today's episode of the Build Blue Podcast. My name is Jess Blaze, the host of the Build Blue Podcast and Business and Community Relations Manager here at Apex Construction Group. And I'm a little intimidated, to be honest with you, because I am joined by Wes Otto and Aaron Jones, hosts of their own podcast, the Get Deep Podcast.
Oh, yes. Thanks for having us on.
It is great to be here, Jess. It's good to see your face.
It's good to see you guys as well. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And in addition to your podcast, you guys are also business owners. We're going to get into all of that today and just have a lot of fun. So I'll start by letting you both introduce yourselves and tell us what you do, and then we'll get into it.
Sure, I'll kick us off. So Wes Otto with OMG Auto Media Group, and we do all kinds of creative services across Mankato, so video, photography, graphic design, websites, anything you can think of on the creative side, and marketing. We're kind of in charge of that. So work with a lot of great businesses in that space, and it's one of my big passions is helping other businesses grow themselves and achieve their dreams and their goals. So really lucky and a big fan of that space, you know. Also, Zan's Mexican Restaurant, which is where I actually got my start in business. My family has owned that for over 35 years, and so I get the distinct honor of having the title of Chief Taste Testing Officer amongst other hats that I wear in that business, and it's also really a cool thing to be a part of.
An icon.
Right.
An icon in Mankato.
Yeah, it's a very, I feel so lucky just to have that as a part of my history, and then also to be able to go in there every day for lunch. So.
We should have done the podcast there.
That would have been fun.
It's about that time of day.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. We would have had our mouths full of cheese Cholitos, and yeah, it was good to do.
Not a lot of talking to get done then.
No, not at all. My name is Aaron Jones, and I am with J. Long's. I used to be a men's store. Now we call it a lifestyle shop, and we have a wonderful place that's for men, for women, and everybody, really, from men's clothing, women's clothing, and gifts. We launched in 1985, but about 2.5 years ago, we took a nice pivot into women's wear. From your casual brands like Lululemon, Alo, Viore, and more, Spanx included, and now we're doing more things that the professional woman in town can find, whether it's a nice pair of dress pants or a blazer or a dress for different events. So pretty cool what's going on there. I've been a part of that business for 16 years, been one of the partners for 12. And it's just such a blessing to be a part of this community and be able to provide something cool for people to check out.
Yeah, we're going to get more into that as we go along on the podcast. But we always start our podcast with an icebreaker. So I have to ask you both, when you were kids growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I had a whole bunch of things, and so it's hard to give one answer to this. Like I said, I'm Chief Taste Testing Officer, so you kind of can't beat that.
You're kind of living the dream.
I already accomplished that, but as a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer. If you ask me now, I would rather be a real estate developer. I get really passionate about real estate and just different opportunities of what to do with buildings. So that's maybe not as fun as some people would think, but now when you're a little older, it's really cool to reimagine spaces.
It's very cool.
So it's fun to see what Apex is working on a regular basis too, because you guys do some cool stuff.
We do some cool stuff. Thank you for saying that. And I think it's exciting too, especially with the history of our community and some of the older buildings. Yeah. It's really exciting to see them get a new life. Mm-hmm. So I agree. I think that is really exciting. And what about you, Mr. Jones?
Well, of course, when I was very young, it was like, a football player. And then you realize when you turn like 10, that's just not really realistic when you're really small. And I don't know, like so many people want to be a professional athlete. That just doesn't pan out. But once I got out of that range, really what I wanted to be was actually a bar owner, a bar and restaurant owner. I always thought it'd be really cool to have a sports bar because I've always loved sports. And when I would go into different places, whether it was with family, before I drank, I loved the restaurant and the environment with the TVs. And then when I got older and could drink, it was just really fun, and people seemed happy and cheering on their team. So I thought, gosh, it'd be so cool to do that. Then, of course, you get older and realize there's a lot more to it than just serving beers and food to people, and there's a lot more challenges behind it. But that's what I always wanted to do, even into college. And then, life changes, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We had Andy Wilkie from Greater Mankato Growth on the very first episode of this podcast, and I asked that same question, and he said, own a pizza place.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's funny. My parents, growing up, owned a pizza place and a sports bar.
That's awesome.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's like...
And how did they love that?
Not.
Not, yes. See, it sounds so sexy when you
does.
hear it and you talk about it. And then just like any business, there's the challenges, but there's also the rewards. But maybe someday.
Never say never.
We'll never say never. Yep, you got it.
So you guys are both business owners. Let's get into a little more details on your businesses. Wes, you talked about helping companies with marketing and creative. What are some of the steps that you take with a business owner to envision what their goals are?
Yeah, so always starting with what are they thinking their goals are, and then trying to hone it in from there, right? Because we all come at things with our own idea or vision and what is possible, right? And really, there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, we could talk about Jay Long specifically, which I know we'll get into in a bit here, but they have such a great personality, right? And so how do we take a clothing business where there's already great aesthetics, there's beautiful things to showcase, whether it's photography or videography, but then add an extra spin to it, give a company its own personality. And there's no shortage of that when it comes to Jay Long's. And so it's just trying to figure out what it is that particular brand has to offer and how to highlight it in the best way possible to grow that audience and grow that customer base too.
I'm seeing a lot in the marketing space that consumers are craving interacting with personality versus just a brand or just a storefront or just a product. And are you seeing that on a local level too?
I think it's even more so on a local level because we don't shop at the small shops that we shop at because they're the most convenient. I mean, that's Amazon, right? That's the convenience box. But when we're looking at those small shops, we're going there because we want to support our neighbor or our friend or family member. So highlighting that personality really does well for those businesses because that's their number one differentiator a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron, you mentioned kind of how Jay Long's has evolved over the past few years with bringing in the lifestyle items and the women's clothing. Let's get into that a little deeper.
Yeah, when Matt Long and myself bought in about 12 years ago and took over, it was already a successful business. It already had some legs that were established from Jim and Judy Long, the other partners, Matt's parents. But we also had sat down and said, okay, well, what do we want to change? What do we want to add and things like that? And we had some great brainstorming sessions, typically over a handful of beers. And some of them were pretty lofty goals and pretty lofty ideas and whatnot. But then when it came down to it, the one thing that we both kind of said is we want to provide a better customer experience. It already had a good one, but we were younger, we bought in, we wanted to make sure that customer experience was still top notch. And one of the things we did, which we don't advertise, but is with that customer experience, we said, what would we like if we were, a guy, because at that time we were just a men's store. If we were a guy coming in here to shop for a suit or something dressy, what would make the experience more fun? Well, of course, we were in our early 20s, so I think it'd be cool to have a beer or a drink when you shop. And that was something that was kind of a unique thing for us at the time that really many people weren't doing locally. So we added that, and what we did is brought in some options from Shell's and some options from the Mankato Brewery eventually, and others to provide a beverage when people came in to shop. And it added to that experience. Not only were we providing them an easy way to find something and walk them from point A to point Z to find their dress wear, but they also kind of took the edge off, and they stayed around longer. When you think about it, if somebody comes in to shop too, it might be a 5-10 minute experience, but if you put a beverage in their hand, it ends up being more like a 15-minute to 30-minute experience because they're sipping on something. So there was a little science behind that too. But I might be going off on a tangent here. I guess customer experience is just so important for what we do. And I hear people say that left and right when they talk positively about our business. And that's what we want. And so I feel blessed that people realize that when they walk through our doors, there's a different vibe. There's a different experience with what we offer. I like to say, and still do over the years, that we're very puppy dog friendly. We're a very puppy dog friendly staff. You know, when you think about it, when you walk in, people are kind of wagging their tails. They're very excited to see you. Typically, we get to know you by name and a little bit about your family, and that's important to us, to make you feel welcome, to give you a moment or two during your busy lives to say, this is relaxing to me, and I want to buy some stuff.
And I think with both of your businesses, keeping on that like personal note, you make people feel seen and you make people feel important. You're like the Cheers of marketing and clothing.
Right. I mean, who doesn't want that? Like, how cool is that, you know? And the businesses that I love going into are the ones that have a similar vibe to what we do. And I love it. And on that note, we've all been into businesses that you don't have that experience, where you don't feel seen and somebody doesn't get up from behind the counter, and it's just, or they don't have music playing, or they don't offer you something to drink, or they barely greet you. It's not a good feeling.
No.
It's kind of a very cold feeling. How many places like that do you go into and actually want to buy something?
Right.
Even if you like the product, you're probably going to buy less or nothing.
Or you feel uncomfortable, or you don't really know, like,
you kind of want to
how
get
to
in and get
navigate
out.
it. Yeah, exactly.
We want people to stay and have an experience and make them feel like family. So
And come back. Yeah. Let's talk about the podcast. We're gonna talk, kind of bounce all over the place here.
Love it.
That's what we get to do.
That's what we do a lot. Wes and I bounce back and forth a lot. So this is good.
So your podcast is called the Get Deep Podcast, and you basically do a deep dive into the stories of interesting people in the area. So I would love to hear the backstory of how your podcast came to be.
Well, there's a couple elements to that, but Aaron and I have been friends. I've been shopping at J. Long's for probably close to a decade, right? And so we've just developed a friendship over the years, and we were having drinks, and he had mentioned that he had this idea. He wanted to do a podcast. He thought it would be really cool to do interviews. I had been actually looking at doing a TV show for social media around Mankato. And so the whole idea being some sort of late night live, let's have guests on, have some drinks, and, you know, talk about what was going on in Mankato, kind of like a late night show, but do it on social media. And so we started talking and said, you know, this could be cool if we just merged those ideas together a little bit more and launched a podcast. And so we had a couple more conversations and started to put together guest lists and spent, 6 hours at Tav on the Ave trying to come up with a name. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But we just had a lot of fun even in the creation of the idea, and have been having fun ever since. What have I missed?
No, I think you nailed it, Wes. I did have that idea for a long time, actually for a couple of years or more, to launch a podcast, and of course my own analysis paralysis. And I come up with a lot of ideas, especially in the wee hours of the morning. If I wake up, it's kind of like, where's my notepad and pen? And I've always been that way. But one of my, again, biggest faults is I have a lot of ideas, but I don't always know which direction to go with them or who to maybe bring on to help me get there. And so that was a blessing to find Wes. We're both creative minds, but he also had a little bit more of the knowledge slash the people that he could maybe lean on to ask a little bit more questions about how to get us started in the right way. So it was kind of a natural kind of marriage, if you will, and together it's worked out really well. We're both very interested in the stories of people in our local community and what they've done, especially being entrepreneurs ourselves and coming from family, his family that goes way back in the community. And deep conversations are something I've always loved. Bonfires and beers and having deep conversations is something I've always been in love with. And I almost thought we should name something like the Fireside Chat, but I'm sure it's taken a million times over. So I'm like, we got to do something different. When we were at the TAV that evening trying to figure out a name, we literally were there for 5-6 hours, and we kept brainstorming, and we told our server named Sadie, Sadee, shout out to her, that, hey, you keep these old fashions coming until we figure out our name for our podcast. And of course we were feeling good. Eventually she's like, well, what is it? Like, tell me what it is. Maybe I can help. and we told her what we were thinking, and she helped us get to the name that we have today, which was pretty cool. So we found it there at the Tab. It was born, and CJ Pearson actually stopped by during our process as well and started telling us stories about the restaurant, and we remember, and he's been a guest on the show, which if you haven't listened to his episode, it's great.
It was really cool.
But basically, he started talking about stories, and we said, CJ, this is exactly what we want to do, is have conversations with people like yourself about your businesses, about how you started, your challenges, and who you are today. So Get Deep was born, and
CJ ended up coming on episode 5, which was really cool.
So it's episode 5. I was just going to ask, which one is CJ on? Their story is so cool.
It is.
And I think we're actually going to have a couple of them on our show. We don't get nearly as deep as you guys do. It's kind of a higher level. It's like a preview to the Get Deep podcast.
Sure.
No, but I think that those conversations are so interesting. And it's like you guys being at the Tab for 6 hours. It's like that those conversations where time just evaporates are the ones that you remember and that are really meaningful. And so I think it's cool that you guys are capturing that with those people for the community to enjoy and learn more about these great people that are doing such awesome things in the Mankato area. So,
appreciate that.
Wes, I want to hop back to your business here. Things change really fast in technology, in marketing, in advertising. Let's talk about the past 5 years, even maybe less. What changes have you seen, and kind of what does the future look like from your vantage point when it comes to marketing and advertising?
Well, Otto Media Group has been around for 6 years. So it's fun to look back 5 years. That's about basically when we had started the agency. I would say the one thing that's really continued to grow, it was already starting, but it's just gotten bigger, is the use of video within marketing. So I think even Apex has been using more video in their marketing. J-Long certainly has been. But, you look at the different platforms that are out there. TikTok is a video exclusive platform. You don't see any other kind of content on TikTok. And that's going to be the continued trend. And I think that's going to eventually even morph into some of the VR or augmented reality pieces. And that's a whole nother level that we don't have to get into today. But that's that same trend, is you just want to be immersed in that content because it's easier, right? We all just get lost in front of the TV, our phone, our computer. If we're spoon-fed it, it's going to be a lot simpler to digest it. So,
Oh, that's such an interesting point you bring up. And if you guys, I know you guys are thinkers. The show Upload on Amazon Prime.
Sure.
So good.
Okay.
It's
check it out. Yeah,
you'll be up all night. Are we in a sim? Is this real? What is real? Highly recommend it. Cool. Aaron, I want to talk to you about your store.
Sure.
And I've heard more than one person call J-Long's a micro department store. I don't even know if that's a real thing, but I keep hearing that kind of term brought up around J-Long. So let's talk about the growing popularity of the lifestyle shop and how you curate that selection, because it feels like everything is really thoughtfully selected. And, before you even touch something, you can tell that it's special. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and I'm glad that you say that. I'm glad you feel that way. We, for, again, so many years since 1985 up until, I would really say, 5 years ago, it was very much, it was suits and sport coats and slacks and dress clothes for men. And then we would just find different brands to make it a little bit more modern within that genre. Jamie Tolbert, who works for us and has for almost 20 years. He's a great guy. Brianna Long, Matt's sister, the youngest child of the Long family, myself, Matt. We all have a hand in buying product for the store, which is cool, and it's a blessing. It used to be just Matt and I for a long time, and I think it's important that you get fresh people in there to look at things and to give their opinion. I think it's the most successful businesses use a team approach, not just a one-person buyer approach for retail, because eventually it looks stale because the same people are only making decisions. So what we found is when we would go different places on purpose or just for funsies, we would go to the cities, or we'd travel to Kansas City for a Twins game, or we'd go to market in Dallas or Chicago or different places. We always made it a point to go check out other men's stores or lifestyle shops. And one thing that we really noticed about 5 years ago is we were lacking in certain things, and those things were as we called them at the time, tchotchkes. It was little simple add-on buy pieces that were, $20 to $50 things or $10 to $50 things that weren't clothing necessarily, but were unique add-ons. We were missing that. And we were seeing all these places that were doing similar things to us as far as brands and quality, but doing all the extras. And we thought, well, what the heck are we doing? We're missing out on this opportunity to bring people in for gift buying options, for birthdays, for Christmas, for anniversaries, etc. And that's when we started that whole path of bringing in extra product to display on shelves and display at the counter that would move quicker, and add-ons for clothing. That was a huge twist for us, and a very, very smart move that maybe we jumped on a little late, but now it looks very natural in our store, and it also keeps people around longer while they're sipping on their delicious wine or beverage, and looking at things, just like you said, picking something up, touching it, feeling it, being, smelling a candle, checking out the wallets or whatnot. And then, like I mentioned, 2.5 years ago, we took a pivot into women's clothing, and we got approved for Lululemon and all these other brands, which was a huge blessing. And that, of course, just boomed us into a different category. So it's not, we've been very lucky. We've been very fortunate that people believe in what we do, that brands have approved us, that the community supports us and believes in what we're doing. And we're just trying to learn every day and continue to do cool things.
Awesome. Let's see. I've got my list of questions, and I don't know if I've even asked any of them. it's so
I tend to talk long. I'm sorry, folks.
No, it's been
rants.
Amazing.
Should be a preacher.
So this is interesting, and this just came up yesterday. I was at a meeting, and someone at the meeting said, do you feel like the definition of business casual has changed? Because it was a conversation that they had in their office about dress and clothing and attire and your appearance. And it got me thinking. I was like, I got to ask Aaron about this. So in an attempt to get deep with the deepest guys in Mankato.
Deepest guys in Mankato.
We have to redo our intro and include that. I like that.
Do you think there is like a psychological connection between how someone dresses, what they're wearing, and how they feel?
Well, I know you know the answer to that because I know you're a clothing girl.
I am.
And I see your posts on social media. I see your inspiration. I think 100% that it matters. It may not matter to everybody, or they'll at least say it doesn't matter. And I think that when people say that clothing doesn't matter and they don't care what they wear, I think it's more that they don't know how to do it differently than what they've done, or they're intimidated by it. And so they don't understand. What we don't understand, we shy away from typically, right? So am I a person that always lives in a sport coat? No. Do I like comfy t-shirts and comfy shorts and prefer to sometimes be naked? Absolutely. I do. However, being in this business, I do and have seen over the years the difference that clothing can make for somebody's attitude, personality, and especially, whether it's an interview they're getting ready for and all of a sudden they're standing a little taller because you got something that's fitted on them and they got a tie that just represents who they are. I think it's cool to see that. And that's something that, even though we're not saving lives, or even though we're not, to many people, making, I should say, I do believe we are making a difference in people's lives on a smaller scale than some professions. But if you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you do good. And I think it matters. And if you're focusing on the details of finding product that fits your personality and your body, you tend to want to do other things right too, whether it's eating better, whether it's approaching that person for a promotion, or whether it's if you're dressed nicely and feeling good about yourself, maybe you find your spouse at that event because you had the confidence to go up and say something to them or grab their butt or whatever it's going to be. I mean, dressing nicely ups your confidence, changes your life.
Oh, I love it. I feel like I could have a very long conversation with each of you individually, like just about what you do, because I feel I'm personally connected to it, and it's just so interesting to go a level deeper on just like, I sell clothes. Right. No, it's more than that.
It is more than that.
It's definitely more than that. I had somebody say to me just the other day, I wish I could dress like you. And I was like,
you can.
You can dress however you want.
I don't know if they could match your heels, though. The shoes that you're wearing right now.
Shoes on. I always have crazy shoes on.
Those are stunners.
I get a lot of funny looks at a commercial construction company with my flashy shoes. They're getting used to it though.
I love it though, and what I like about you, Jess. One thing that I like about you. There's many because you're a wonderful person, but you have the confidence to pull off things that other people could, but they just don't believe they can. And so it goes back to the confidence. You have that kind of I don't give a damn attitude. I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw it on, and I'm going to post about it, and let other women know that you're okay in whatever frame you're in. Just own it. That is the big thing, and I've said to so many clients, men, women, over the years, just own it. Just own it, and nobody will ever question it. You don't have to be this size or that size. Put it on, own it, walk with confidence, and even if you don't necessarily feel it right away, you'll get there.
I love that.
I think so. Anyway.
I love that a lot. Wes, marketing is overwhelming. Advertising is overwhelming. If you were going to give advice to a new business owner that is looking at all of these different avenues, and there's social media, and there's TikTok, and there's YouTube, and there's all of this stuff, how would you give advice to a new business owner to simplify and identify the right direction to go with their marketing and advertising?
Well,
that's a big question. I'm
it
sorry.
Is.
It's a really big question.
And there's probably a couple pieces to it for an answer. But the first one being determine what your personality or what your marketing strategy is going to be. And the second piece that simplifies it is develop a pillar strategy. So, I think video is a great example. Some people can go and talk and do a podcast like this for 30 minutes and do a whole video version of it. And that's great because you've got this one piece of content. You can use that just by itself, but you can also go into that 30-minute video and take different snippets out. And now all of a sudden your 30 minutes of effort that you put into that one piece of content turns into 12 or 15 pieces of content. So if you just develop your marketing strategy, you can do the same thing with writing, you can do it with audio, any kind of content where you build one larger piece and then find the snippets within that to use for marketing. You can simplify a lot of your work effort that way.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
It's a great way to approach it because I think it is there's so much out there, and a lot of it is noise. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah. I could talk to you guys forever. I really feel like I could. And that's probably why the Get Deep podcast is so popular.
Keeps coming back.
People like it. We also, of course, have the blessing and honor to be sponsored by Chankaska for our drink sponsor. And we all know that you love Chankaska, Jess, as well as you, Wes. But they've been great to us, and people really appreciate, again, going back. Not everybody has to drink. It's not about necessarily getting hammered and opening up, but there is something about being able to sit back with a glass of wine or a cocktail, and it feels kind of like family, like you're at a family function. Yeah. You sit back in the comfy chair and you dim the lights a little bit and just talk to people about what life is all about.
Stunt Monkey didn't even have a drink when he came on his episode, but he told us at least 3 times that it felt like therapy doing the podcast.
Isn't that funny? There is an element to having conversations with people, especially in person, that is very therapeutic.
Absolutely.
Like it feels very God, it's just, this feels great.
Yeah. It's why 2020 was so crazy, and why I think your depression shot up through the roofs with people not seeing others for so long and having that, not to bring back that terrible year, but it's kind of rejuvenated, I think, people to want to be in person again and to do that. And it has for me. I can only speak for myself, I guess, but I love faces. I like seeing people and talking about their stories as well as my own.
Yeah. And cool. I think a conversation that we've been having a lot is 2020 changed us. And maybe it was changes that were inevitable and were coming anyway. And maybe it just fast forwarded those changes in so many different ways, whether it was our businesses or our personal lives, or I think it just gave us time to stop and reflect, and it changed people in a lot of ways, whether it was inevitable change or not. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
No. Well, thank you so much, you guys. You can listen to our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube if you're dying to see us. I never look. I'm always just
had to do it. I mean, it's over there. I kind of forgot you were recording on video for a while, and I'm like, why have I not been making a few faces just for funsies?
That would be funny. There you go. All right, Wes Otto, Otto Media Group, Aaron Jones, Jay Longs, and the Get Deep podcast. And where can we listen to your podcast?
Ooh, Spotify, Google, Apple. Eventually, we're going to be adding video as well. And so hopefully YouTube. And then, of course, on getdeepcast.com, you can find the episodes as well as other information like where to buy some wonderful Chankaska spirits. So
Yes, absolutely. And Jay Long's, of course, on Madison Avenue. Excellent store.
Thank you.
And Otto Media Group, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys for marketing and advertising?
Well, our website, automediagroup.com. We're also on Riverfront Drive. We've got a really nice 3,000 square foot office space, which is also where we record the episodes. So
I was going to ask. I thought maybe you did it at the store there, but
No,
Yeah.
we record right at OMG, and it's a really cool space that Wes and his team have created up there.
it's got a similar vibe to your guys' office.
Does
it's
it?
very industrial.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
you
come.
up.
I'm gonna have to come check it out.
Yeah, it's a neat space, and I this is a little shout out to Wes and the OMG team because obviously they handle our marketing, and I've done a really good job with the videography. His boy Kurt Schrader, awesome guy, very very talented. Just as a business owner, I'll just encourage anybody who's listening that's in business, whether it's Wes's team, which I hope you reach out to him, but reach out to somebody who lives in that space. It's definitely worth the money, and you just got to commit to doing it for a little bit, and you'll see an ROI on it. It's creative marketing is huge, and that's how it sets you apart and gets you through the noise to be noticed.
Don't be afraid to have a little fun.
Thanks for that.
$5.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's what we agreed
10?
on. Yep.
It was pretty
Sure.
good. I'm going to say 10 on that
Okay.
one.
That one's fine.
All right, that is the Build Blue podcast. Aaron Jones and Wes Otto. Thanks so much, you guys.